Welcome back to Worship at Home. This week we are thinking about Memorial Weekend and thinking about those who are no longer with us, especially our veterans who didn't come home. This week we are talking to Neil Pauly, and he's going to share his experience when he was in the Navy and how his time in service helped him to find the Lord. Hope you enjoy. God bless.
If I had only known the last time would be the last time, I would have put up all the things I had to do. I would have stayed a little longer, held on a little tighter. Know what I'd give for one more day with you. There's a wound here in my heart where something's missing, and they tell me that it's gonna heal with time. I know you're in a place where all your wounds have been erased, and knowing yours are healed is healing mine. Only scars in heaven won't belong to me and you. There'll be no such thing as broken, and all the old will be made new. And the thought that makes me smile now, even as the tears fall down, is that the only scars in heaven hands that hold you now. Not a day goes by when I don't see you. You live on and on the better parts of me, till I'm standing with you in the sun. I fight this fight, this race on one, until I finally see you can see. 'Cause the only stars in heaven won't belong to me and you. There'll be no such thing as broken, and all the old will repay you. And the thought that makes me smile now, even as the tears fall down, is that the only scars in heaven were on the hands that hold you
John 14:6. Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the light. No man comes to the Father but by me.
Well, welcome back, everybody. This week we're talking to Neil Pauley. With Memorial Weekend coming up, I just kind of wanted to find a veteran who was willing to tell their story. And Neil has a really cool story about his time in the service and how he found God. So Neil, how would you say, what brought you into church?
When I joined the military back as an 18-year-old, I was raised in a church as a child, and when I became a teenager, I began to question everything that I couldn't see and touch. And by the time I joined boot camp, joined the Navy and went into boot camp, I was actually an atheist. A lot of people don't remember when they signed up on your enlistment papers and you swear in, there's an option. You could either swear, which is swearing to God, or do affirm, which means I don't believe in God, so you'll have to take my word for it on my oath. A lot of people, even that went in the military, they don't remember that part, because almost everybody, and most people probably never encountered someone who refused to take the oath swearing to God, and I did. That's how decided I was in my decision about being an atheist. But I got to tell you, when you get into the military and you start doing some of the things that you need to do, you realize you're not all that. You don't have everything you need to get through everything you go through. And I was an air crew member on a P-3 Orion. We were sub-hunters, submarine hunters during the Cold War. And we would spend 10, 11, 12 hours out over the open ocean at night in storms, just flying out in places that you knew if you went in the water, they'd never find you. And the wings are flapping on the plane because of the turbulence, or there's lightning, or just whatever. And you kind of start to think about, well, what do I do? And I remember times that I was afraid. I was very fearful that I wasn't going to come back. And so I knew that I was crying out to somebody, please save me. And I never asked if you're there. I just said, please save me. So what this tells me as I look back on it is that I professed that there wasn't a God, but down deep somewhere I had never let go of the knowledge of him, and that at this time when it really came down to it, that he had to be there. There had to be a God, because that's who I was reaching out to. It was the only one I knew that I could trust beyond, to get me out of the situation I was in. I didn't make promises to him, if you get me through this, I'll, whatever. I just said, please save me. And we would land and, get through this stuff. And did I have a conversion at that moment? No. I'd get back to the dry ground and go, okay, we're good now. The fear's gone. I even persecuted some of the holy Joes, we called them, the guys that wore their Christianity on their sleeve. You could tell they were Christian. And I would give them a hard time and persecute them. So I made it through 4 years in the Navy, decided to get out and come home. And, but while we were in the Navy, my wife and I got married. She was from back home here in Wichita. This is where we met. As a matter of fact, our first date was December 9th, January 15th. I signed up February 22nd, I was in boot camp. So we dated for about 2 months.
Wow.
And then, but we were connected in a way where we said, well, let's just try to keep this going and see what happens. And we kept in touch. We wrote back and forth, and we acted like we were in a relationship, and so we stayed together. And a couple of years in, I came home, married her, and took her back to Florida with me. And her sister here in Wichita was going to a church, South Church, and she was so excited about what she was learning that she contacted her sister, my new wife of 6 months, and said, hey, these people are all over the world. Maybe there's somebody there that can come visit with you. And so a Bible worker from the local church down in Jacksonville came over and sat down with us. Her name was Barbara Noonan. She married a guy in the church, and last name became McCoy. And she served out quite a career down in Apopka, Florida, helping in the pastorate down there. And Louis Torres, which many people have heard of in the Adventist circles, was the one that actually baptized my wife.
Oh, wow.
And I remember sitting in our living room, and Louis over there and Barbara's over there, and I'm here smoking a cigarette, and I light my cigarette, and Louis starts talking to me about the evils of smoking. And I never did take a drag off of it. I just kept flipping the ashes off, because I didn't feel like I felt like I would have been blowing smoke back in his face if I did. So I just kind of nursed it until it went out. And anyway, my wife joined the church at that time, and I didn't want to. I wanted to continue doing the things I was doing. That I made it very clear that it's not the kind of things God wanted me to do. Just to live a self-indulging life of, addictions and passions and all of that. I mean, I just kind of wanted to do that, and I was worried about how that would end up in my marriage. But fortunately, my wife had a commitment to me and to what she had decided, and a new commitment to God that just gave her the patience and long suffering that it takes to live with a non-believer. And so I studied a little bit. I began to get the seed planted. I began to learn a few things, study a little bit. memorized a few verses, started to get really what the gospel was all about. I started to understand who Jesus was, why he did what he did. And I had a little bit in there, but I was just so far from making any kind of commitment. We got out after the 4 years. We'd been married about 2 years. She was pregnant, but we left the service anyway, even though we were coming back to no health insurance. We just needed to come back. Her mom was sick with Alzheimer's. My dad and I were going to work together. Thought we had a pretty good plan. So we have our child about 6 months after we get home, 4 months. And a year and 9 months into his life, we find out that he's got a disease. And it appeared as bruises along anywhere that the bone was close to the skin, like the shin, along his backbone. It was just some bruising. And we took him in to the doctor for something else, a fever or something. And the doctor saw those bruises and he got concerned. And he said, and it sounded almost a quote, "When we see things like this, we suspect abuse, but before we point any fingers, we're going to run some tests, because it could be a blood thing." And so I remember we were trying to think of who our babysitter was, and what's the problem here, and I can see why they would be concerned. And Lord, please don't let it be leukemia. This is our thoughts. Well, the doctor came back, and after some tests and stuff, they came back and realized he had something worse than leukemia, because leukemia they could kind of work on. What he had was aplastic anemia, which just means your bone marrow with the basic building cells for blood, they just never develop into complete blood cells. So your counts are real low. Your platelets, your hemoglobin, everything, your red blood cells, everything's really low, which makes it difficult to fight infection, difficult to stop bleeding, all this. And so they said basically he's going to be very fragile. If he gets a bleed, watch it, and you may have to bring him in. If he runs a fever, you may have to bring him in, and so because he can't fight this stuff.
Wow.
So we were sort of freaking out. My wife was panicking, but doing a lot of praying, and I was trying to do a little praying, and was kind of thinking, well, they say he could grow out of it, so I'll just go that route. And a year and a half later, after tests and treatments and hope and disappointment and him outliving the 6 months they gave him, he's now at about the 1 year point. He was doing pretty bad one time. Had a fever running. They were trying to keep it down with, Tylenol or whatever. But the doctor called me out in the hallway, and he said, "You understand your child's condition. How heroic do you want us to be? If he goes into a life support situation, do you want us to hook him up or not?" And
Wow.
I stood there for a minute and I thought, this guy is asking me to issue a do not resuscitate order on a 2-year-old that looks healthy, that's running around playing, that's not bleeding or crying. What are you trying, what do you mean? But something came over me at that moment, and I believe it was a culmination of all the inputs God had given me up to this point, all the things he had done somewhere in my life. And I said, you know what, there is one that has a control in this situation, and it's not you and it's not me. And whatever he decides to do, I'm going to have to live with. I just pray that if it's not what I would decide, that he tells me what it is and why. Tells me why he did what he did. And about 4 days later, as my wife and I held our son, he died in our arms. And I remember after leaving that room in the ICU, he had a brain hemorrhage is what happened. He just popped a blood vessel in his brain, and there was nothing they could do about it. I remember walking down the hallway as I left that room, and I just kind of looked up at the sky and said this: "Don't forget to tell me why." And at that moment, when I look back at that moment, that was the moment that I said, God, I'm going to trust you with something really big. And for some reason or another, I trust you so much that I'm willing to let it turn out either way, as long as there's a reason for it. Like I'm willing, it's going to happen what's going to happen, he's going to do, he's going to do, it's not my call. But somehow I was settled into that. And as we went on after that, I think my wife, you'd have to talk to her about her exact feelings and doubts and exactly what she might have felt at the time. I just know that she seemed to be drawn to God. But for some reason or another, even with that, I didn't have my why yet. I just had, you let him die. And I was drinking pretty heavy at the time, pretty regular. And I believe I drank every day for the next year from the time that happened. Every day. And back then, you couldn't buy alcohol on a Sunday, so I would buy double portion on Saturday. Kind of like, the story of manna.
Yeah.
Where you take a little extra on the day before so that you got enough for the next day. What a weird comparison, but that's what I say. So it was like making sure I was stored up. And so I kind of crawled in the bottle for a year, and I drank hard, and to the point sometimes where when I woke up in the morning, I would look out to make sure my car found the way home too, because I couldn't remember coming home. I mean, this was just blackout drinking and driving and foolishness. And the day that the 1 year anniversary of Ryan's death, I was out drinking, and I know my wife had been praying. She shared with me later, she said, Lord, I know it may be selfish for me to request that no one gets hurt, but you got to do something to get his attention, because he's not listening to anybody. He's hell-bent for destruction. I wasn't angry. I didn't beat people up. I didn't do that kind of stuff, but I was foolishly drunk, driving, risking everything, and not acting like I cared. So she asked him to help. And on the anniversary of Ryan's death, when I was out trying to drown my sorrows, a couple angels in a squad car pulled me over, gave me a breathalyzer, took me downtown for a DUI, and I went through the legal process, got sent to go to meetings and intervention and all this stuff. And one day after going to my first AA meeting, I came back from that meeting, and I'm sitting there in our home with my wife, and I looked at her and I said, those people are nuts. Those people are crazy. I'm not anything like those people. They don't have a clue what life's about. Whatever I said, I just put this big line of crap out there. And after I heard myself say it, I asked her, I said, did you hear what I said? Did you hear that line of junk that just came out of my mouth? And it was at that moment that my denial disappeared. And I went back to those meetings and said, hi, my name's Neil, I'm an alcoholic. And I was there to talk and to learn and to find a way to get through this. But an interesting thing happened at that time, too. I told you I drank every day. And even after I got DUI, I continued to drink and come home and not remember coming home. And I was still doing that. I was still messed up, even though I was in trouble. So one day in early June, we're having a garage sale. I wake up about noon. And somebody came over to our house, and the first thing I heard them say to me was, hey, Neil, I drank your last beer, so I went and bought you some more. Well, this was early June, and I bought that beer for a Memorial Day weekend 2 weeks earlier. Drank most of it during that weekend, came home, put it in the refrigerator, and for 2 solid weeks, the thought of drinking never crossed my mind. Everyday drinker doesn't even think about drinking for 2 weeks. And I said, take it with you, do not leave it here. I'm not sure why or what happened, but I haven't thought of or touched the stuff in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And I remember just thinking, thank you, God, that he just took it away. Not by my request, but he just took it away. And this Memorial Day, I plan to celebrate 37 years of sobriety.
That's awesome.
After letting that go. And in subsequent years, my boss's grandchildren were in a fire. The 2-year-old died at the scene on Monday. The 5-year-old was in the burn unit at St. Francis. The funeral was scheduled for Thursday for the 2-year-old. On Wednesday, the 5-year-old passed away.
Wow.
Friday, we had a double funeral with small caskets. When I heard these children were hurt, one had died and one was hurt, and the family, I knew his son, the in-between. This was the grandfather and the children. This was the son. It was his kids. And I went up to the hospital a couple of nights that week to talk to people. And I shared with them as much as I could think to share with them about hope, about God, about life and death, and about my experiences of losing a child. And I got so many hugs and appreciations for being there, for talking, just for being there for them. And I remember not long after that kind of going, oh wow, God, that's that question I asked you years ago. I asked you why.
Wow.
And you said, this is why, because I need you to be able to share with other people what it feels like and what I did for you, and that they can count on me no matter what. And so I kind of got my answer, and it's been answered several times since. And in the time that followed that, and probably 8 years after sobriety started, I sat in church one day and I heard the voice talking in my head saying, what is it that you think is so important to hold you back from surrendering every part of your life to God? What's holding you back still? And I answered out loud. Nobody knew what I was talking about when I answered. I was in a room with a few people, but I just said, nothing. There's nothing that I have on the direction I'm going that is worth missing what you're offering me. And I just stood up at the appeal and said, I'm ready to surrender. I'm ready to do this. So in 95, I got baptized into the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And, God gave his son to save many. And I sometimes look and wondered if I lost my son so that he could help me to save many. And I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with that. If it's what it took him to get me, I'm not worried about eternity for Ryan. He wasn't even 3 years old.
Right.
I'm not worried about his eternity. I'm worried about mine. I'm more worried about my own living children, the ones we've had since.
Yes.
More worried about their eternity. But if it's what it took to get me, I don't question his wisdom. I just wish I had more of it.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing all this. This is pretty powerful stuff. Your flag out there, 22 veterans. That's the suicide rate.
22 a day. That's what my shirt says too. 22. Well, I know I'm not as actively involved in this as I'd like to be. I buy their shirts because I know part of the money goes to help. I talk about it a lot. When there's somebody that's got a program that's helping, I see what I can do to be a part of it a little bit, at least a little bit. But you were in, I was in. There is a brotherhood that you get when you're in the service. And when you've got people that around you that know what they can expect from you, and they expect it from you, and there's people around you that you expect things from. and we deliver. We do it. We do what we need to do. We all know what we're supposed to do. And even though your mama's not there to help you, there's enough people there that you get through, that you know what you need to do, that you take care of what you need to take care of.
Right.
And you know that you can stay there as long as you want, as long as you're willing to put in the effort you're going to put in. Your job is secure. Your pay is secure. You've got friends around you. There's a risk. There's a high risk. Because what do they say? Every veteran that goes, everybody that joins the military writes a blank check to Uncle Sam, payable up to and including their death.
Yeah.
So you might not come back. But there is a network there that allows you to thrive. Not everybody does, but there's a network there that allows you to thrive. But it has these built-in pieces that you can fit in and be part of. As soon as you get out and get out into the world, it's like going from high school to college. There's nobody there babysitting you anymore.
Right.
There's nobody there looking out for your back, and you are on your own. And the skills that you're now trying to acquire or apply likely aren't the same ones you had. Even if it's basic leadership, you still don't quite have the network you had back there. And when you're over here willing to die for your country, and then you come home and your country's not willing to die for you, sometimes you're just willing to die.
Yeah.
And it is sad. And like I said, I wish I could be so much more involved in that. But, and I whenever I can. One of my favorite shirts I wear just says, "Keep moving forward." And on the back of it, it says, crawling is okay, crying is okay, puking is okay, fear is okay, quitting is not okay. You just keep going. And so when I read anything on Facebook where somebody's been through something, or they've just come out of it, or they're trying to get out, all that, that's what I always put. Keep moving forward. Just one step at a time, whatever, keep moving forward. Another thing I do, whenever I see someone wearing a Vietnam hat, I always say, "Welcome back."
Cool.
Because it's the one thing they never heard was
Yeah.
"welcome home." And so I met a guy the other day and was talking to him, and after a short conversation, here's where I was, here's where you were, and all that, I hugged him, and I just said, "Welcome home." And when I said that, he grabbed me so tight.
Oh.
Frail old man, and he just grabbed me so tight when I said that. So I do want to do more, and it's a sad case that people that they don't have enough hope left. They've lost all their hope, which is what suicide is. Suicide's a lack of hope. You've got
Right. nothing
to hope in, and so there's no hope is the future, and without a future, you end it today. And that's sad.
It is. Well, Neil, I really want to thank you for your time.
Unreal.
It's a very powerful talk. It's going to affect me.
Well, I just need a place to lay my head. Forget the chain that hangs around my neck. These guns are not as heavy as the hearts they defend. I can't wait to get back home, where I can find some rest. When I lay down my guns and lift my hands, surrender to love and live again. May these desert reach its end, where my new life begins. When I lay down my guns and lift my hands. And I have seen the devil in this place, and I lost myself when my friends found the grave. When you're this far from heaven, And I'm laying down these burdens, taking off the weights, and I can't count the miles that I walk to find my way to lay down these guns. How I need to lay down these guns. Lay down my guns and lift my hands. Surrender to love and live again. May this desert reach its end, where my new life begins. I'll abandon my defenses and live to love again when I live.